We're live on African Independent Television, AIT. This is Moneyline with Nancy. Good morning, everyone. I am Nancy Naji, and it's nice to know that you're joining us again today. This morning, I'll be turning my focus to a question that sits at the heart of Nigeria's economic survival. And what is that? Food production. Because you will eat, I will eat. And the growing plight of the Nigerian farmer. At the time when food inflation still remains elevated, purchasing power is under strain, and household budgets are being squeezed. The farmer, the first link in our food supply chain, is under intense pressure. From rising input costs and insecurity and policy signals, as well as uncertainty around food importation over local production, farmers are being asked to do more with less and at greater risk. Local producers are struggling to stay viable. This matters because agriculture employs over a third of Nigerians, contribute significantly to GDP, and remain central to food security, FX conservation, and rural stability. When farmers struggle, we should all be concerned. Inflation will persist and import dependence depends, as well as economic resilience weakens. In a moment, I'll be joined by Nasir Dama, an agribusiness strategist, as we examine what is really happening on the ground, what policy gets right, what it's getting wrong, what's holding farmers back, whether current policies are working, and what must change to secure Nigeria's food future, and what must change if Nigeria is to feed itself sustainably. So stay with us, and as always, you can reach us via our WhatsApp number. That is the number on the screen, and our social media handles as well on the screen. But first, let's get started with our business news. The federal, state, and local governments shared a record of 26.5 trillion naira from Federation accounts revenue in 2025. The figure represents an 84% increase from 2025, reflecting stronger government receipts. We saw that the FG took the largest share, with allocations nearly tripling to 14 trillion naira. Can we have the graphics on the allocation? State governments received about 7.5 trillion naira, while local governments collected just around 5 trillion naira. We saw that VAT distributions also rose, while all producing states received 1.6 trillion naira in derivation payments. Revenue flows are also expected to improve further as tax digitalization and base broadening efforts gain momentum. The Central Bank of Nigeria Governor, the CBN Governor Olayemi Cardoso, says recent monetary and FX reforms have helped restore economic stability in Nigeria. Speaking at the National Economic Council conference in Abuja, Cardoso said the measures have strengthened the naira, improved the balance of payment, and kept the banking system sound. He cited a $3.4 billion balance of payment surplus in the third quarter of 2025, a moderation in inflation to just over 15%, and external reserves near $49 billion. However, Cardoso warned that election cycles remain a potential risk to macroeconomic stability. Meanwhile, the government said fiscal reforms have strengthened state finances, while achieving a $1 trillion economy could require stable, sustained double-digit growth. The Central Bank of Nigeria and the NCC are moving to tighten consumer protection in digital payments. Under a joint draft framework, banks and telecom operators would be required to process refunds for failed airtime and data purchases within 30 minutes. The proposal targets persistent complaints over multiple debits and undelivered services, while clearing long-standing disputes over liability between banks and mobile network operators. The regulators also plan a shared real-time monitoring dashboard, quarterly compliance scorecards, and automated customer alerts. Stakeholders have until February 2026 to submit feedback before final rules are issued. Okay, if you're a small business owner, perhaps you need to listen to this. Corporate Affairs Commission is offering a free business name registration to 3,500 micro and small enterprises across the country. The initiative, announced to mark the agency's 35th anniversary, is aimed at reducing the cost of formalization and bringing more businesses into the regulated economy. According to the Registrar General of the Commission, Hussaini Magaji, formal registration expands access to credit, government services, and wider markets. The Commission also plans to deepen digital reforms, including a collaboration with Google to upgrade its technology and service delivery. Now let's move to another regulator. This time is PENCOM. PENCOM says informal sector workers can now make pension contributions using mobile phones and USSD codes. The DG of PENCOM, Omolola Olowo, unveiled the option at the launch of the country's first pension accredited agent, aimed at expanding coverage beyond the formal workforce. The Chief Executive Officer of PENOP, that's Pension Funds Operators Association of Nigeria, Tonia Okoro, says less than 1% of informal workers are currently enrolled, despite the sector dominating the economy. The new technology-driven model is designed to take pension savings to markets, rural communities, and small businesses across the country. Industry leaders say the initiative could help close Nigeria's retirement savings gap and extend financial security to millions of workers. All right, I'm just checking the time now. Perhaps we should take a look at our markets before we take a break. Okay, Director, should we go for a break first before we take the markets? Perhaps we should. Let's take a break, and when we return, it will be time for us to cross over there to take you through the markets for the day. We'll be right back.
Previously on Moneyline with Nancy.
We should galvanize local capital.
Yeah.
So what other things? I would like to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, I think, yes, so I would tilt a little bit to the government in terms of, the government is doing a lot. But this,
a lot like
no, in terms of supporting, whether it's fund, for example, Bank of Industry. But I'm just giving an example. But most of these supports are fragmented. And again, there is less awareness to this kind of support. And again, support is not necessarily in terms of cash. It can be, we have a place or a venue where once you come in, you don't have issues with lights, you don't have issues with infrastructures.
We should galvanize local capital.
Yeah.
So what other things are...
In Iraq, so powered by Educare in different other regions. So, but the point is that I believe so much that we can build super great companies that can serve, 100 countries from Nigeria. I was also very intentional about it. I didn't even have, from course, almost every week, there's always a $10, $50 million offer from Silicon Valley. The point is not because I can't access funds and move like others. Personally, I feel that we can build great. I'm also very intentional about it. I did not because I can't access funds and move like others.
This is Moneyline. This is Moneyline with Nancy, and this is a program that sets your business day for you.
Inflation played a 9-1 on us, and the cost of doing business and the cost of living crisis persists. But we can win. We can win on those two things.
We need to work on our infrastructure, maintain what we have, and add new infrastructure. Isn't it interesting to you that it still costs less to ship something from China to Lagos than from Dakar to Nigeria?
Resilience is not only bouncing back when there is crisis or shocks. Resilience is about the ability to adapt, the ability to innovate, the ability to thrive in a VUCA world, which is basically a world that we have a lot of vulnerabilities, a world that we have a lot of uncertainty.
Thank you, Nancy. You've been doing a great job in trying to educate Nigerians, and we must appreciate you for that.
Everybody tells me you're the gold standard in this business, yeah.
Well, Nancy Naji, you're the best you can be, and with that change that you want. This is Moneyline with Nancy, and this is a program that sets your business day for you.
Inflation played a 9-1 on us, and the cost of doing business and the cost of living crisis persists. But we can win. We can win on those two things.
We need to work on our infrastructure, maintain what we have, and add new infrastructure. Isn't it interesting to you that it still costs less to ship something from China to Lagos than from Dakar to Nigeria?
Resilience is not only bouncing back when there is crisis or shocks. Resilience is about the ability to adapt, the ability to innovate, the ability to thrive in a VUCA world, which is basically a world that we have a lot of vulnerabilities, a world that we have a lot of uncertainty.
Thank you, Nancy. You've been doing a great job in trying to educate Nigerians, and we must appreciate you for that.
Everybody tells me you're the gold standard in this business, yeah.
Well, Nancy Naji, you're the best you can be, and with that change that you want.
Previously on Moneyline with Nancy.
We should galvanize local capital.
Yeah.
So what other things, I would like to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, I think, yes. So I would tilt a little bit to the government in terms of the government is doing a lot, but this
like
no, in terms of supporting, whether it's for example, Bank of Industry. But I'm just giving an example. But most of these supports are fragmented. And again, there is less awareness to this kind of support. And again, support is not necessarily in terms of cash. It can be, we have a place or a venue where once you come in, you don't have issues with lights, you don't have issues with infrastructures.
We should galvanize local capital.
Yeah.
So what other things are...
In Iraq, powered by Educare in different other regions. So, but the point is that I believe so much that we can build super great companies that can serve, 100 countries from Nigeria. I'm also very intentional about it. I didn't even have, from course, almost every week, there's always a $10-50 million offer from Silicon Valley. The point is not because I can't access funds and move like others. Personally, I feel that we can build great. I'm also very intentional about it. I did not because I can't access funds and move like others.
Very much, Nancy, for having me, and thank you very much on behalf of all the Nigerian farmers for providing us with the platform, to share our experiences and also to explain to Nigerians the plight of farmers in Nigeria, what we've been going through. So what is happening in Nigerian situation, or the farmers in Nigeria, what the farmers are experiencing now is quite very alarming. Alarming in the sense that despite the contribution of the farmers to Nigeria's economy, the current situation, the policy that was, introduced by the current administration to allow open borders to, for the inflow of grains. So most of these grains are what the farmers can produce locally, or what the farmers have been producing locally, has placed farmers in a position whereby farmers have no or little option but to walk away from their means of livelihood, which has always been to produce locally and also to supply, to the local markets. So this is the situation where farmers find ourselves. And also we have no option at the moment but to see a large chunk of farmers walking away from their basic means of livelihood. And to answer your second question concerning the flight of farmers across the country, I think it's all over Nigeria. The situation is the same, because one of the most, the most common trait, or one of the common denominator in this aspect has always been, the price of the output, the price of the produce after farmers must have produced. So the inflow of the foreign grains it happens always at harvest time. So, and when the market is going to be overflown with the grains from outside Nigeria, we have no option but to crash the prices of the input, or the price of the output after farmers must have produced. So the flight of farmers across Nigeria is the same. All farmers across the country are feeling, the weight of this current policy. Yes.
So what are the current policies you're talking about? Because government, apart from, you talked about the importation, the grain imports, that was done by the government. I think that directive was given in 2024, if I'm not mistaken. I think about 2024, and it was said, is it 2024, 2025, But a 180-day window was given. Are you talking about that specifically, or are there other policies of governments that you are talking about that is not favoring farmers at this time?
Okay, so I'm speaking about that policy you just mentioned, which was introduced in 2024, I believe. Yeah. And it was a policy that has given farmers a window of 180 days, but it allows importation of these grains, like I mentioned, that we are to produce it locally. In fact, this is the strength of Nigeria's agriculture. These grains that are allowed to be imported into the country, these are the strengths of Nigerian farmers. This is what more than 75% of Nigeria's population are producing, or if we go across all the different value chains. So that is the policy I'm referring to. And if you recall, I believe the previous administration has introduced a policy whereby we close our borders to stimulate and encourage local production, and which we've recorded in Nigerian economy, not just farmers per se. Nigerian economy has recorded a strong boost in private sector participation, where we've seen an increase in the number of private investment into the agricultural space. If you take, for instance, after that, the policy of closing our borders, yes, there was some pain in the beginning, when because the farmers were not ready, we are not producing, which skyrocketed the prices of the little commodities that we had available at the time. But after a period of time, it has encouraged private sector investment, where we have, a large number of agribusinesses being established, which stimulate growth, which provide access to market for the farmers that are producing these commodities, and also provide access to market for even the input manufacturing companies that are like the fertilizers, the seed, and the crop protection chemicals that has been supplying this the ecosystem. And it also serves as a platform which provided labor to millions of Nigeria, means of employment to millions of Nigeria as of then. So what this current policy did was that it's just like a reversal. It reversed, the previous policy, right? I'm not saying the previous policy is perfect, it's 100%, but it's something that has provided courage. It's something that has provided farmers with predictability. We can predict, okay, if I produce this, definitely the market price, we can be able to say, okay, it's going to be ranging from so amount to so amount. Then we can do our computation. We can come up with the economics of production. We can tell if farmers can make profit or not. But what the current policy did is to reverse this predictability, this stability that has been provided in the ecosystem, and also now farmers are producing at a very serious loss. I'm sure you must have seen the recent statistics where it was reported in one of the national news that in the last 24 months, farmers lost about 5 trillion naira in the last 24 months. So this is just simply to tell you that this thing has been going on for immediately after the proclamation of the policy, and after and the first cycle of production after the policy implementation. So this is the current situation, and this is what we've been feeling. Thank you.
Apart from that policy, because the policy we're talking about was in 2024, when the federal government announced that food importation policy, giving an initial window of, I think, 180 days, and 180 days have passed. But if we take that policy aside, I want to ask you, and I want you to give me a very sincere and objective answer. Apart from that policy, if the government did not do that policy, are we sufficient in grains? Are we grains sufficient to produce the grains that we're supposed to eat? Because we saw prices at exorbitant rates at that time. A bag of rice was going for 150,000 and all of that. But in December, even at Christmas period, people were buying rice for like 50K, 60, 47. It depends on which market you purchased it. So I would like you to give me a sincere answer to that. Apart from what government did, were Nigerian farmers able to produce that would be sufficient for us?
Yeah, thank you very much. So the issue, we don't have anything against control importation of grains, right? In a situation whereby the importation would be allowed, or the local farmers will be allowed, or will be given the opportunity to compete against the importation. So, but in this situation, there is no level playing ground for farmers to be able to compete for the importation, right? So that is, let me just make that clear so that we don't have anything against importation. And targeted importation, for example, now, in a situation whereby farmers produce, right? We cannot be able to say at the moment farmers do not have the strength to produce what will fit Nigerians on all year round. But I can tell you, we are on track of getting there. We are definitely on the course of getting there, and which was due to the policy that from the previous administration, which, like I stated, stimulated a lot of confidence and courage for people to venture into the agricultural ecosystem. So farmers are on track of that. I can tell you that we can be able to produce about around 70 to 75% of the total food requirement for Nigerians. Farmers do have that strength at the moment, right? So if the importation will be allowed that during the lean period, the lean period is a period whereby these commodities that were locally produced were not available in the market. Then we can allow importation to happen at that period, within that period of time, to complement, to be able to cover up for the gap that the Nigerian farmers could not be able to provide at the moment.
Nasir, do you think, sorry for barging in, let me just add this, do you think that even at that time we saw food prices skyrocketing in 2024, do you think that farmers were also partly to blame for the price hike that we saw? I know at that time inflation was over the roof, about 30-something%. I know you would also want to tell me that, okay, farmers are also Nigerians, they have input costs and all of that, but were farmers also to be blamed partly because of what we saw, and government moved in to be able to crush food prices because there was a crisis, actually. There was a cost of living crisis, yes, at that time, and the government needed to come in.
Yeah, exactly. The government needed to come in. Farmers are largely not to be blamed because we look at the triggers. What were the triggers then? What was causing the increase in the prices of the commodities? Right? What are the triggers? These triggers, when you look at them, you have to look at the cost of input as of then, right? Before, immediately after the announcement of the subsidy removal, all the prices of all inputs are skyrocketed immediately, because when you look at it, averagely in the then time, the cost of 50 bag of fertilizer was ranging around 25 to 30,000 naira, right? But immediately after that proclamation, the cost of input was skyrocketed to around 60 to 65,000 naira per bag, right? When you also look at it in the then time, when the issue of subsidy removal was announced, it's in the middle of production cycle, dry season production cycle. We are on the field already when that was announced. So you could imagine in the month of April, we are buying a liter of fuel at 145 naira per liter, and then it skyrocketed to 450 naira per liter. So definitely that is going to be reflected in the cost of, commodities in the market after harvest. Right, and there are other triggers that were not deliberately as a result of government's subsidy removal. These triggers could be the shock from COVID-19, right, and also the issue of when there is no cash, the issue of cashless policy from the previous administration. All these were triggers that has resulted into that exponential increase in the prices of commodities, right? So farmers, we don't determine the output, we don't determine the price. So Nigerian agriculture is largely smallholder,
yes,
right? About 70 to 80% of Nigerian farmers are smallholder farmers. In the rural Nigeria, they don't even have say in what the price, the output price is there. There are other market factors that are beyond farmers' control that has contributed to that serious increase, in the prices of commodities. So to a very large extent, farmers happen to be just the victims within that value chain. Yes, farmers benefited, right, as a result of that, because I think that was the season when farmers were able to realize very strong...
Did farmers benefit so much, or is it middlemen? that benefited.
Farmers benefited, but the middlemen, most especially, you know, the middlemen, I don't want to be, but the middlemen and also some other agribusinesses, not all agribusinesses, have benefited from that, right? But if you look at it, we have to look at the triggers. What goes to the farmers at the end of the day is not as people, if you bought a bag of rice at 100,000 naira, that is not what went back to the farmer, the smallholder farmer, and the rural Nigeria that is producing that. So there are a number of layers that has played role in doing that. And even them, you don't have to blame them like squarely. The blame is not on the middlemen or the agribusinesses. We have to examine the triggers that have resulted into, you know, for the prices to skyrocket.
Okay, Nasir, the margin of profit, the profit margins for farmers before and now, how do you categorize it? Because even perhaps let's put it this way, that before, let's say farmers used to enjoy, what was the profit margin as at that time compared to what it is now? I know it's different for different sectors, but if you can give me an average, you know.
Okay, so thank you very much for this. You know, when things were going fine, like when farmers were, you know, benefiting. So usually, let me take an example with maize, right? The cost of the economics of production, when you do your computation and calculation and everything, you will arrive at 40% return on investment per season.
Okay.
Right? On average, you can get 40% return on investment. Right, in the daytime, that is what farmers were smiling. And when the prices also skyrocketed as of then, you know, it has escalated to around 60 to 65% return on investment. You know, that is the peak when we take the average. So, but currently at the moment, we have a negative of 50. I am a trained agriculturist. I have experience. I've been farming since when I was in university, right? So I'm telling you, I have decades of experience in crop production. But even myself, not a smallholder farmer, not just a farmer that has been producing because he's paid, so his parent produces. A trained agriculturist with agribusiness experiences, among other things. I have operated in the last previous years, I have operated at a negative 45%.
That's huge. That's minus 45%. That's a huge loss. So how have you been surviving and other farmers? Because you mentioned earlier on that because of this, farmers are leaving. What are the farmers? What have they left to do? What are they doing now? What are the farmers doing? Because many farmers have left their farms. Actually, I gather that also from what you have said. But you still maintain this grit. I want to assume you have your staff and all of that. So how are you surviving? And the farmers that have left, what are they doing? And how do we fill that gap? And what must government do immediately? Is the government really attending to this situation, or they are looking at it with kids' gloves? Or we need to bring the matter to the fore more?
Thank you. So many things. You asked so many questions, and I believe they are right on course. Because, you know, like I said in the opening remark, thank you very much for providing us with this platform, because it's a platform that will allow the policymakers to listen to us, to listen to the plight of the farmers, to understand the situation and be able to do what is right in order to fix the problem. So let me go over with the first question you asked, what are farmers doing? Right? Currently, farmers are not producing, and they are not doing anything. So when you go to rural Nigeria today, the poverty stinks. The poverty in the rural Nigeria today stinks. They don't produce anything. Farmers are idle. They are not doing anything. It's the few of us that are still maintaining, trying to produce, because it is basically our way of life, that we are still doing it with the hope that government will hear our cry and come to our aid, you know, reverse the policy or do something about the policy that would allow farmers, you know, to really, so that we can make a profit or even break even. So the farmers are not doing anything. A few of us that are still standing, we are also operating. Let me give you an example with myself. I am going for dry season production again, but I'm telling you, I'm doing 1/10 of what I used to produce. 1/10. So that I just have something, I'm just maybe for family consumption and small, something like that. So farmers are not doing things. Even the commercial farmers are not producing because nobody wants to operate at loss. And currently what is happening, we are operating at loss, right? That is one. And secondly, what government is currently doing, I have read recently on one of the national dailies again, that government is coming in to support farmers. Farmers do not need support. What farmers need is predictability. We should be able to predict the market and protection when we are producing. We know that, okay, our investment is being protected, right?
So, okay.
Our investment is being protected. If you would produce, yes, we know that we should be, all we are yearning for, all we are calling for is a level playing ground. You know, when we produce, we know that, okay, all of our cost of production should be taken into cognizance. Then also a reasonable margin should be allowed, right? Farmers, if today farmer knows that if I produce, I am likely to get 20 to 25% return on investment, farmers will go back to their field. But as I'm telling you, in the rural Nigeria, the smallholder farmers, they don't even have the capital to invest in agriculture because they must eat, they must feed their families, and their capital investment is what they use. They finish everything. That is why I tell you that the poverty in the rural Nigeria today stinks.
It stinks.
When you go there, it's alarming. So the few of us that are still producing, you will see influx of labor, people coming, okay, let me work on your farm. And you have a 2-5 hectare of farm, and you'll see 50 people coming to work, wanting to work for you. So there is no way you can provide employment to these 50 people. You understand what? So all of these are not adding up. The economics is not adding up. It's not making sense. And another thing that, that I feel government should do, first of all, I would like to put this thing out there. I feel government was responding to the pressure of Nigerians that the food price increase is alarming. It was very dangerous. I admitted to that. I know every person out there, the same person out there should admit to that. And farmers this is not like a tug war between farmers and consumers. We are also consumers. Farmers are consumers as well. So it's not like farmers versus consumers. It's something that we should look at. What we should look at prices of input. What were the triggers? What is causing this as exponential increase in the cost of prices? You bought a bag of a kg of seed for maize at 6,500 naira, and you need 20 to 25 kg per hectare. That is 6,500 times 25. It's going to be a serious amount of money.
Okay. Nasser, you talked about fertilizer earlier. I'd like to know how much a bag of fertilizer is now, because you said even on the tick of when that was happening, it was about 30,000 naira a bag. How much is it now? Because the NADF, the Agricultural Development Fund, just said they are going to do a harmonized fertilizer manual. So how much is a bag of fertilizer now? And perhaps with this harmonized manual by the federal government, how do you think that it would impact? Then the other question to you is also private investment in agriculture. And when we're talking about agriculture, we're talking about, of course, you're an agriculturist, so you know what I'm talking about. It's not just food production. Where are we seeing more private investment, really?
So thank you very much. I think to answer your first question, the price of fertilizer now, on average, because you have different brands of fertilizers.
Exactly.
It ranges between 50 to 65,000 naira.
Oh, so the price is even more. So it's more.
It's more. Yes.
Are you talking of the NPK or which one?
NPK.
Okay.
I'm talking of NPK. Yes. Okay. Usually urea is not as costly as NPK. But if you talk about the range for NPK is that from
so 60 to 65,000 naira a bag.
Yes. So and for, if I can give you another example, for a rice farmer per hectare, if the farmer is practicing best agronomic practices, he's going to be needing 11 bags of fertilizers, 8 bags of NPK, and probably 3 bags of urea. You understand? So if you factor that in, this will just tell you that fertilizer alone engulfs more than what used to be the total cost of production in the previous season. Fertilizer alone. You're not factoring in cost of seed, cost of crop protection chemicals. You're not also factoring in the cost of, labor, which is another thing on its own, right? So you're not factoring in all of these things. So fertilizer alone is going to give you, you're going to be spending around 600,000+ per hectare of maize, with a national average of 3 to 3.5 metric tons per hectare. That is 35 bucks per hectare. And with the price of this maize at 24,000 naira per 100 kg, you can just do the math and understand what farmers are going through. So this is what we've been talking about. This is what I think this thing has been gaining momentum. These issues have been gaining momentum. People are here and listening now.
What's the
People are
minister doing? We have 2 ministers of agriculture and yes, food security. What do you think the ministers are? Do you think they've been up to speed with what is happening? And also the different states, because in as much as we call on the federal government, states is where agriculture happens, different states. How do you think that state governors have attended to the issue of agriculture, crop production, and all of that? I know that a few states are taking agriculture seriously, or perhaps they're paying lip service to it. Some are doing more commercial farming, like oil palm and all of that. But what kind of reforms do you expect from government in terms of the center and the federal and the state government? Then what is the Ministry of Agriculture doing under the 2 ministers that are there?
Yeah, thank you. So the center, what we want from the center should also look at the policy. Personally, I'm not a policy expert. But personally, I feel this policy is a policy blunder. It's a mistake from the center, because it's reversing everything that has been done. It's reversing everything that has been achieved. And this has been the trend. It's not just for this situation. It has been the trend in Nigerian agricultural policies. If you go back since independence, you see a number of policies have been put in place, with the goodwill, with the good intention, but we don't have the political will to a very large extent to be able to see these policies through. Okay. Some of them are very good, you understand, and this particular policy that we're talking about, is a policy that comes in with the good intention of supporting or carving out or reducing the level of inflation in the food sector in Nigeria. That is a very good intention.
Okay.
That is a very good intention. But the way we went around about it, the way the federal government went around about it is what I feel was a blunder. With due respect.
How about states? Yes, states. Let's move quickly. Yeah. We have 2 more minutes. States.
Okay, so for the states, what the state can do, the state do not constitute policies. What the state is doing is to provide subsidies to support farmers with input at a reduced cost, which is which is a good policy, it's a good initiative if it's targeting and reaching the smallholder farmers, the real smallholder farmers, not political farmers.
Okay.
Not political farmers. Yes.
I can't end this interview without asking you about extension services. What is the levy? Because I know you're also involved in that. Extension services. Speak to us about that. And finally, do you think that we can really achieve food security in the country, as the president promised us in his manifesto when he was campaigning? Just a few months to 2027. Do you think we can achieve food security? And speak about extension services.
So thank you. So extension services, just like generally extension services in Nigeria or in Africa or even globally, is in a very serious challenge. Most especially if you look at extension services, you will come to realize that there is serious increase in the number of farmers and decline in the number of extension agents that we have in Nigeria, because the gap is quite very wide. Due to this, from recent statistics, one extension agent is attending to 6,446 6,446 household farming families. So you can see that this statistic is very alarming.
Okay.
Looking at, if you compare it with the standard of the FAO standard, which is one extension agent to 800 farmers. So in Nigeria, we have one extension agent to over 10,000 farmers. So the extension system is still in distress.
Okay.
But turn to private sectors like the likes of Extension Africa and some other companies that are now coming in to provide private extension services, which is helping in bridging the gap in the farmer to extension agent ratio. And also with the use of technology now, we are reaching as to many farmers as possible using technology.
Okay.
Technology as a means of reaching to smallholder farmers.
All right.
So I think this is the situation of agri extension in Nigeria.
Okay. So, Nasir, I think we'll leave it at that. It's been nice having this conversation with you, at least for us bringing it to fore. You've given us serious thoughts, things to think about, and as well the data. A bag of fertilizer, 65,000, one extension worker to close to 10,000 farmers. That's a lot. It also reminds me of what happens in our medical sector, where you have one doctor servicing, you know, so many patients. So from what you've said, agricultural sector is actually in a crisis mode and we need to sort it out. Thank you very much, Nasir. I'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for providing us with the platform.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, and that's it on today's edition of the program. I need not say more. It's self-explanatory. There is the Moneyline with Nancy on the station. I am Nancy Naji. Be the best you can be. Be the change that you want to see. I'll see you all again tomorrow, God willing. Bye for now.